Life provides us with different opportunities, and every day that we wake up is another opportunity to be alive, to be thankful, to go ahead and fulfill vision. Of course, be able to do the things we couldn't do in days past. And yes, today is Monday, the 23rd day in the month of October. Another interesting day to be alive and thankful. And of course, utilize the opportunity that God has entrusted to you, inshallah, for those of us who are of the Muslim faithful. And, utilize those opportunities to do all the things that you had proposed in your heart to do for the betterment of yourself, your family, friends, and loved ones, and by extension, the larger society. My name is Francis Oyima, and I'm excited to welcome you on board today's Rise and Shine. Of course, we're being live from Spectrum Television, coming to you from the very beautiful city of Akwa Ibom State. Now, on Rise and Shine, we take you around the latest happenings and developments. We'll also span across developing stories that happen over the course of the weekend, and even things that have happened since last week that are still very much on the front burner for discuss. And of course, we'll also take you around the latest things happening around outside Nigeria. The world is a larger village, as we all have a way of interrelating, and everything that happens within and outside Nigeria as a way of coming back to also have its impact on us. Take for instance a war happening between Russia and Ukraine, and now the one between Gaza and Israel, which of course is beginning to have its impact around the world, with world leaders reacting and calling for the cessation of hostilities and fire. Of course, we'll always encourage you to follow us on our social media platform, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. That being stated, of course, within the course of this conversation, you also have the opportunity to be part of today's discuss. All you have to do is connect us on our socials or make use of the phone lines that will be made available on the screen to reach out to us and let us know what you think of the different issues that are up for conversation. Now, that being stated, we head on to a very first flash news this morning. The issue of people spending years in correctional facilities when their case has not been tried before a competent court or a court of competent jurisdiction. The issue of people, languishing in cell facilities across the nation has been of grave concern. Of course, we've had human rights activists and different interest groups clamoring for a change in the narrative and the operations of the Nigerian judiciary, which of course made it possible for people who have not been tried or people who are awaiting trial to spend years upon years in prison custody long before their case is decided upon. Of course, these grave concerns have a way of infringing on the rights of Nigerians and people who otherwise would have been living their free life. And many have described these as a breach on justice, and of course called on the federal government of Nigeria to look into the issue of strengthening the judiciary, make sure that there is speedy processes of cases, just to ensure that people do not get to spend too much years in prison when, for a fact, they have not been convicted of any crime. Well, we saw, yes, within the course of last week that there was a move by the federal government, the Minister for Correctional Facilities, to actually ensure that a total sum of 500 million naira is being raised to pay for people who are in prison custody because of their inability to pay for the respective fines that were placed upon them by the different courts across the Federation of Nigeria. That amount, about 500 million naira, was a very huge burden, and that has been said as to be one of the reasons why we have thousands of Nigerians in the prison custody. Now, this move has been widely criticized and widely praised by different quarters, but we see that Femi Falana, the human rights activist, has asked the minister to review the plan for the 500 million naira fundraiser that he had anticipated to do in a move to decongest the prison. He rather said that money should be channeled when raised into bettering the livelihood and the welfare of the prisons, the inmates within the different correctional facilities across Nigeria. Now, one would ask a question between making sure that people who were convicted for different fines, some as low as 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, between setting those people free, being able to pay their fines and letting them go, and trying to better their welfare inside the prison cell? Which one is better? Now, that is the big question we'd like to hear from you this morning. Are you in support of the minister moving to raise funds for the settlements of fines of inmates who are unable to pay those fines, and thus being the reason why they are still in prison custody? Or you are in support of what the human rights lawyer Femi Falana has said this morning, that we need to move away from not just raising the fund, but utilizing that fund to look into bettering the welfare of people in Nigerian prison. Now, don't forget that as far as the Nigerian Correctional Facility is concerned, there are a lot of concern as far as you're talking about the issue of over congestion. You're talking about the fact that the Nigerian prison are overcrowded with people. You're also talking about the fact that their welfare is not adequately being provided for. Now, within this argument between Falana and the minister, which is better and which would best save the interests of Nigerians in the different prison facilities? Now, of course, many people would say, in the interest of justice, in the interest of fairness and equity, it is far better to actually be able to raise 500 million naira, settle the different fines that has kept these thousands of people in prison custody, release them, and of course, this will not just aid in the decongestion of the Nigerian correctional facilities, but also would lead to ensuring justice is served and people who spend way longer than they should have in the event that they were given a prison sentence for the different capital offenses that they committed should have been freed by now. Well, that's an issue and up for conversation. I would like to get to hear from you what you think. Are you on the part of Femi Falana, or you are on the part of the minister who has moved to ensure that this is addressed holistically in the interest of Nigerians and people who are in prison custody? Of course, we move away from that to a second flash story this morning. We see that the Naira may rise as CBN plans bank hoarding dollars. Of course, for the longest time now, we've been talking about the consistent disparity between the dollar and the Naira. As of last week, the dollar to a Naira rose above 1,000 Naira for the first time in decades, and that has given great concern to different quarters of the Nigerian economy. We saw last week that the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria came out to say that the disparity between the dollar and the Naira has significantly affected the cost of production. Of course, the purchase of raw materials for those who import raw materials from outside the shores of the country for their different businesses. You're also talking about the cost of that, the burden of the dollar-Naira disparity on inflation. We're talking about the cost of living. You're talking about the importation of petroleum products, which of course is also on the high side. Last week we saw the federal government, the NNPCL, and the independent marketers going at loggerheads, while the independent marketers said the federal government has thrown the back door, reintroduced the payment of subsidy. The federal government, on the other hand, said they have not reintroduced. Now, it's a wonder when we're told that landing costs for petroleum products had risen to about 710 to 730 naira as of last week. Now, when you look at that, and fuel is still being sold at about 600 to 620, 630, depending on the fuel refill station that you're getting your fuel from, it's a bit of a wonder why marketers will buy and land at about 700 plus and then still be able to sell their product at almost 100 naira, 110, 120 naira margin compared to, the landing cost. But where are we at this point in time? Are we to believe the federal government standpoint, or we are to believe the independent marketers who have said this is the situation of things happening in the country? Now, when you look at all of this, it gives concern. Then talking about the fact that marketers or banks sectors are hoarding the dollar. This has been the longest conversation that we've had, long before the era of the cash crunch, where it was alleged that independent or different banking halls were hoarding the naira or the dollar, that you find it rather being sold to bureau de change operators, but people who have sincere need for the dollar cannot access the dollar, let alone utilize it for the different purposes for which this dollar is needed for. Now, it gives a grave concern in a country where the banking system seems to be operating at a different level compared to what we see outside the shores of Nigeria. Now, the big questions many Nigerians are asking is, will we ever get to see the CBN leadership being able to adequately regulate the activities of the banks? Now, in the event that we've been told banks are hurting the dollar, what punitive measures have the CBN put in place? What monitoring processes, what checks and balances have been put in place to ensure that banks who are hurting the dollars are being found out? And of course, not just discovered, but also punished in line with extant laws and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because all of this is further bringing down the economy of the country, is further driving up, the disparity in terms of dollar naira. It's also bringing a big burden on the manufacturers in Nigeria. And coming at a time when President Ahmed Bola Tinubu says his government intends to ensure there is equal opportunity and there is an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Now, one would ask, where is the equal opportunity? Where is the enabling environment? Just last week, we had conversations on this set with the state coordinator of Standard Organization of Nigeria, where he said the focus for us to be able to have Nigeria, made in Nigerian product, being appreciated within and outside Nigeria, then we must get to a point where the quality of the product is the same and even greater than what is being imported into the country. So by the time you have quality, your quality is superior to the ones that are being imported. Of course, people will definitely go for the better quality or the best of the qualities that they have available. But then there are certain concerns that we need to look into. Most Nigerians who are into manufacturing, most entrepreneurs, most businesses are running on fuel. Now, what happens when you're buying fuel at about 600, 630 naira? That is fuel for your vehicular logistics. And then you're going to buy diesel, for your heavy duty trucks. And then, of course, you're also buying diesel to run your facility and run your machines that you use in production. So by the time you add all of these, compared to the cost of productions outside the shores of Nigeria in places like China and other bigger countries of the world who are into manufacturing or manufacturing giants and hubs, how is it favorable for the Nigerian manufacturer? How can the manufacturer in Nigeria be able to compete with that level of ease? I mean, you're looking at a wide margin of cost of production compared to between the Nigerian producer and people who produce outside the shores of the country. So it still raises a whole lot of questions, a whole lot of issues. How far are we going to take before Nigerian manufacturers are able to meet? We know that sometime about a month ago or thereabout, the federal government, through the vice president, Shatim, had said that the federal government, through the NDDC Power Distribution Company, will be able to provide solutions to manufacturing hub by providing stable public and subsidized power supply, so that these people can have power 24/7, and that will significantly aid in reducing the cost of production, which of course will also have its effect on the quality and the cost of the produce that is being produced in Nigeria. But how long that is going to take is another cause for concern and a worry for Nigerians. But of course, we also look at and watch and see how the move by the federal government is going to spiral out, and how that is going to affect the economy of Nigeria. Of course, we see that Minister Wale Edun has praised President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's homegrown plan to revive Nigeria's economy. Recall that since President Ahmed Bola Tinubu took over as the president, he said from the announcement of the era or ending the era of fuel subsidy, his priority has been shifted towards building a better economy for Nigeria. And consistently, he's made comment urging Nigerians to endure a little bit the hardship that is coming as a result of some of the policies of his administration, that in the long run Nigerians are going to be happy about it. But there are different questions, several concerns Nigerians are having. It's almost running into 6 months, from May, June, July, August. September, October. This is 6 months, going to 7 months since Ahmed Bola Tinubu took over as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Almost 7 months since the era of fuel subsidy was, lifted off the Nigerian scene. And since the very first month that we were told about 1 trillion naira was saved from, the fuel subsidy removal, we haven't heard much from the federal government as to how much has been saved so far and what that money is being channeled to do. But of course, it's also a big question. We've seen the new CBN governor and deputy CBN governors promising a change in the narrative as far as inflation is concerned, as far as the different policies coming from the federal government is also concerned. Now, the question is, how long will Nigerians wait to see this transformation? It is one thing for the minister, Wale Edun, to talk about the fact that, the move made by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu will also be able to revive Nigeria's economy. But when we're talking about Nigeria's economy, you're talking about the organized private sector, you're talking about the MSMEs, you're talking about, traders in the market, you're talking about hawkers in the street, you're talking about, the artisans, you're talking about virtually all the sectors of the economy. How will these different policies affect these different subsectors? Those are very big questions for concern on the part of Nigerians that is being raised. But of course, the minister has stated his standpoint that Ahmed Bola Tinubu's homegrown policy will help, as he had transformed Lagos State. Now, the same blueprint is going to be implemented to transform the narrative for Nigeria. How that is going to spiral out and what that means for the Nigerian society is a cause for concern. But then many would also say that this is something that we have to wait and see how that is going to unfold. But the minister has stated that Nigerians need to tolerate and need to endure a lot more and exercise patience while President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is working tirelessly round the clock to fix the economy in the betterment of society. But of course, Nigerians are a little bit apprehensive at this point, as they say they are yet to see the impact so far made by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. The only thing Nigerians know is that the removal of fuel subsidy has further brought in hardship to the people of Nigeria. They've also said as far as the removal of fuel subsidy is concerned, so far there has been no significant impact. They're not even talking about the fact that the planned palliative released by the federal government has not gotten to the actual target audience, talking about the poorest of the poor, as we have seen reports across the different states of the federation where government officials were caught selling the palliative. We've seen traditional leaders or community leaders also being engaged in fraudulent transaction when it comes to the distribution of the palliative. And we've also heard from, across the federation, a paltry 2 cups of rice, 1 custard, pail of rice being given to a family. And then you ask the question, how long has that been able to serve Nigerians? Of course, we know that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu last week launched the 25,000 naira conditional cash transfer with different tweets coming over the course of the weekend, where we were told that people who do not have a bank verification number, BVN, people who do not have a national identity card, and other details that have been listed by the federal government will not be taken into consideration with the conditional cash transfer. And of course, that also raised another question. How many poorest or people who have been categorized as the poorest of the poor do have a bank account? How many of them will have a national identity card? How many of them will have some of the criteria that have been listed by the federal government? And many Nigerians liken the move by the federal government when that criteria was released over the course of the weekend to the educational scholarship, that educational grant rather, that was provided for by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration when he signed it into law, and the criteria were such that people cannot access it for the poorest of the poor, which of course the educational loan was targeted at. Of course, there is a need and a call for the federal government to relax a bit the criteria and the conditions that have been put forth for the conditional cash transfer. How that is going to work out, well, we leave it for Dr. Beta Edu, the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, and we'll look at how this is going to pan out within the course of the stay. Moving away from that to our developing story this morning, of course, we see that the Israel-Hamas war has continued to generate a lot of reactions. We see that President Joe Biden and Pope Francis and different protesters have called for a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas. Of course, this is as a result of the thousands of people who have lost their lives and the properties that have been lost as a result of the offensive that has been launched by Israel. You're talking about an all-out offensive on land, sea and air strikes, which of course is targeted at Gaza. Now, one interesting question that many have also asked in the course of this: how is it that Gaza is running out of water, all the basic needs, food, water, and the basic things that people need to survive, but they're not running out of missiles to launch counter-offensive attack on the government of Israel? Now, that's a big question that many will ask. But then, when you look at the situation and you ask the question, was there a need for the militants from Gaza, the Hamas militants, to go into Israel to attack, killing innocent civilians and abducting hundreds of hostages, which of course there have been different calls for those hostages to be released. And of course we saw last week that President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa offered himself to mediate in the conflict between Israel and Gaza. Of course, different countries of the world have also spoken. We saw last week that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was in Egypt to look at how to ensure that the food carts, the food trucks that were waiting to bring relief materials to the people gain access. How that is going to span out is still a cause for concern. But the biggest people who suffered most in all of this are the people of Gaza and the people of Israel. Now, these different protests are calling for a cessation of hostility and a cessation of fire in the part of both the Israeli forces and the Hamas militant group. But of course, this is a call that has been made available across, but how the different countries are going to react is something that we do not have control of. But we know that Pope Francis, as of last week, had also called for a prayer to be held, a fasting and prayer session to be held, as a way of seeking God's presence and intervention to address the concerns happening, not just between Israel and Gaza, but also the one happening between Ukraine and Russia, considering the number of lives that have been lost and the number of properties that have been wasted. As of last week, we saw the UN described as being thrown into the abyss, that Gaza was being moved into the abyss as a result of the bombings carried out by the Israeli forces. But of course, and as much as we see things happening, of course, in the last 1 week, about 4,750 persons have died in the course of the conflict between Israel and Gaza. That's a grave concern. While our heart goes out to the families and the people of Israel and Gaza, and of course, we join forces and voices with Pope Francis, President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to call for a cessation of fire. And of course, we do hope, the world hopes, that President Cyril Ramaphosa will be able to mediate in the conflict and be able to find a solution. Of course, first and foremost, the advocacy is for a cessation of fire and hostilities, and then that will make room for dialogue to happen. But of course, moving away from the crisis between Israel and Hamas happening in Gaza, we come back to Nigeria, still on developing stories. We see that a group of some Zamfara communities have written to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu over in-season bandit attacks within Kwara, Namoda, and the neighboring areas in Zamfara North Senatorial District. Now, in the open letter by the group, Zamfara Circle Community Initiative Kwara Namonda Coordinating Unit, the residents of the communities urged President and the state governor Dauda Lawal to do anything within their powers to stop these attacks. Of course, according to them, they may be the next target. The group in the letter dated October 19, 2023 said if no action is taken, the recurring bandit attacks will not only result in the continuous loss of lives and property in the area, but could also have attendant economic and social consequences on the entire Zamfara North Senatorial District and the state in general. Of course, they stated that the attacks, which have already subsumed most local government in the zone, example Shenkafi and part of Benin, Magaji, and Zumi, among others, because of the frequency and tenacity, of course, is already laying waste to a lot of communities and farm produce, and of course threatening the livelihood of the people. Now, this goes back to the fact that we've had insecurity being the major focus of this administration, and yet day in, day out, we see that a lot is happening, and it seems the more the Nigerian armed forces carry out onslaught against the criminal activities of bandits, of different terrorist organizations, the more they find new ways and new trends to continue unleashing mayhem on the Nigerian society. But of course, the concern is consistently growing, and there's a call for both the Nigerian people and the government of the day to look into issues and ensure that this is being resolved. Of course, the people, the community also are calling on the different armed forces of Nigeria to be a lot more proactive in their approach towards resolving the issue of banditry, kidnapping, and other terrorist activities happening in Zamfara State. Now, and of course, we know that since President Ahmed Bola Tinubu took over office, he has been very consistent by stating that one of the key areas his administration is going to focus on is the fight against insecurity. Of course, there have been marching orders given to the security chiefs, from the Nigerian police to the army to the Air Force and other armed forces organizations in Nigeria, to weed out this criminal element and continuing their onslaught against the terrorist organizations operating across. Of course, there have been a lot of successes also registered by the Nigerian armed forces. We've seen a lot of gun trucks. We've seen a lot of supply chains being destroyed. We've seen a lot of airstrike being carried out against the terrorist groups. And of course, we cannot by any way not commend the efforts of the Nigerian armed forces, who have taken the strike and the fight to this criminal element. But of course, in the midst of this, there have been a growing advocacy on the part of both the armed forces and security experts, who have consistently maintained that the Nigerian military has a way to tackle this. But then whatever it is that is holding the willpower for an all-out strike to completely wipe out and weed out this criminal element, this terrorist organization, from the surface of the Nigerian community, is a cause for concern. And there's something that the leaders, the ranks and files of government, need to holistically look into and address it before it becomes a bigger and major problem for our collective growth. But of course, we cannot also overlook the economic implication of what is happening across board. Talking about the fact that insecurity becoming the new normal has created a cause for concern across Nigeria. One of such being that companies in Nigeria have relocated outside the shores of the country as a result of insecurity. Of course, these companies who are moving, we're also seeing the attendant effect of them moving. That has led to unemployment on the part of Nigerians. It has led to people losing their jobs. It has also led to the growing number of unemployed indigents across Nigeria. But moving away from that to our last developing story, last week we saw the Minister for Works, Dave Umoahi, ordering contractors, giving them the ultimatum to return to site. Of course, the contractors have come out to respond. Now, contractors handling federal government road projects are insisting that unless something is done about the depreciating value of the naira and continued delay in adequate funding of road projects, they will not return to the site, as ordered by the Minister of Works, Senator Dave Umoahi. Now, the contractors are also pleading with the federal government to allow for contract variation where cogent and verifiable reasons are adduced because of inflation, since the federal government is owing contractors heavily. Recall that in November last year, former Minister of Works Babatunde Fashoda disclosed that the federal government owed road contractors about 11.16 trillion naira. These were some of the positions that, of course, the contractors put forward after a return to site order by the Works Minister was given. They explained that sincere dialogue to resolve the issue of indebtedness would have helped avert disagreements that may come out as a result of the order made by the Minister of Works, David Moai. Of course, they said the planned demonstration to deliver good roads, and of course loaded in members of the House of Representatives for calling for Senator Moai to suspend the proposed adoption of concrete road for construction. Now, of course, another conversation that has been making the headline has been, since David Moai came on board as the Minister for Works, he has consistently maintained that it's about time the federal government looks into constructing concrete roads as against asphalt. Of course, we saw the move being widely appreciated across different quarters, while the contractors, on the other hand, questioned the wisdom for such decision in the middle of most of the contracts that had long been awarded, and some had started and are different stages of nearing different stages of execution, and some nearing completion. Now, in the issue or in the event that these trends are changed, how will this affect costs? That's question number one that the contractors have had and Nigerians have also asked. And then, of course, the cost disparity between when the contract was given and now that the Minister of Work is saying we do not want asphalt again, we want concrete. What is the difference between the asphalt job and the concrete? And will the federal government be able to fund that difference, especially owing to the new trend and the disparity between the dollar and the naira? Of course, the contractors have continued to declare their unalloyed loyalty to ensuring that they deliver projects that are in line with specifications and the contracts that they signed with the federal government. Of course, we saw that within the course of this also, the House has said they were going to deliberate on the move by the Minister of Works, David Moai, for concrete roads across the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Of course, the minister also cited that the President, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, while in Lagos State, did construct concrete roads, and that is the reason why he's also making it happen. Of course, he's also called on different contractors not to sabotage the move by the federal government to ensure that concrete roads were being made, which of course he said will last and save the country a lot more. But we wait to see how this is going to unfold. There is a debt issue between the federal government and the contractors. There is also an issue of price variation if this switch is going to happen. There are also questions of the Minister of Works, David Moai, not doing due diligence in assessing all that will come as a result of the changes from pricing to the durability of the roads, to the competency of the contractors, to what that will mean for the federal government, to the lifespan of the road and the duration that it will take for the different contractors to be able to finish up with the work. All of these concerns are channeled into one, and of course is a grave concern for Akwa Ibomites and a grave concern for Nigerians, a great concern for the contractors. But since the contractors have said they're also open for dialogue and hope to be able to talk things out with the federal government, we'll have to wait and see how this is going to span out. Of course, we head back to Akwa Ibom State. We're talking about kidnapped corps members. Of course, it's been a long time. It's almost about 3 months now since corps members traveling from Akwa Ibom State to Zamfara State were kidnapped on their way to save the nation. But since that happened, we have not seen anything happening from the federal government. The last time we heard from the NYSC leadership was that one of the corps members that were abducted was released rather, and others were still in captivity of their captors, while the NYSC said they were going to look into the situation. How that has panned out and what has been done so far, we are not aware. But we know that last 2 weeks, a seasoned investigative journalist from Akwa Ibom State, Ibanga Isine, did write to the Senate President, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the leadership of NYSC and other security organizations in Nigeria, towards securing and ensuring that these core members of Akwa Ibom extraction are being rescued and, of course, brought back and reintegrated into the society in one piece. Of course, there is also stated the fact that the parents of these NYSC core members are consistently being traumatized, while we cannot also access the livelihood, the safety, or guarantee the safety of these core members, at this point. This raises a lot of concerns, and within the course of Rise and Shine this morning, we will be having a conversation with Mr. Ibanga Esine. Of course, we'll be looking at some of the concerns that have been raised by him and the issue of insecurity and how that has affected us. But we'll move over to our first major story just before we head out to the Delhi Spotlight. We see that the Senate has said they plan to unbundle INEC and make it possible for Nigerians in diaspora to vote, at least during the presidential election. Of course, that decision was made over the course of the weekend in a retreat held in Akwa Ibom State by the National Assembly members. At the end of that retreat, we saw some of the resolutions that were ruled out by the red chambers, of course, towards ensuring that INEC is repositioned. They also talked on the move to look into the Electoral Act 2022 and ensure there are changes. Some of the key changes include electronic transfer of result or electronic uploading of result from the respective polling units, collation result across the respective vote also to be loaded on the safer of INEC, and a lot of other issues that have risen as a result of the just concluded general elections, which many have said if that was holistically addressed, then we will not be having the thousands of court cases that have arisen as a result of the just concluded elections. And just before we wrap up our conversation this morning, of course, the federal government has also said that the emergency economic bill that is being moved by the state national assemblies or by the national assemblies will look into tax reforms, job creation, and other areas of priority that will make ease of doing business in Nigeria a lot more accessible and very, very competent for people doing business in Nigeria. Of course, looking at creation of jobs for the teeming unemployed people in Nigeria has also been raised. Of course, Nigerians are waiting to see how this is going to span out. The one major thing Nigerians will always say is the policies might come, but the implementation would be the problem. And that wraps it up for our conversation this morning. We head out to Delhi Spotlight, where we'll be bringing you the newspaper headlines from across the national dailies. To stay with us. Of course, this is Rise and Shine coming to you live on Spectrum Television. Time now for us to take you around the front pages of the national dailies and daily spotlight. And of course, we're starting with the very first paper this morning. The Nigerian Tribune is our first start. On the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, you find the kicker that says exchange rate industries battle for survival as Nigerians suffer losses. The writer there says manufacturers pay up to 30 different taxes levies annually, man laments. Petrol pump price hit 630 naira per litre in Abuja. More filling stations shut down. That story is on page 6, 7 and 8 of the Nigerian Tribune. Atiku's team displays documents signed on Saturday by Lagos court apart from his affidavit. That's on page 22. Still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, you see contractors oppose federal government's order to return to site without payment review. That story is on page 11. How gunmen dressed in military uniforms attacked Bello's convoy. Kogi government. 28 page of the Nigerian Tribune has the story. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Ogun gives traders at Kara other road setbacks 21 days to quit. Those are the major stories you'll find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And just before we let go, National Assembly sued over purchase of 360 SUVs valued at 57.6 billion naira. Page 27 has the story. Of course, we also see appeal court sacks Senate minority leader, orders rerun. That story is on page 23. Custom laws officers, Boko Haram attacks Yobe facility. Page 26 has the story. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. And next up this morning is the front page of Vanguard, and the kicker there says presidential tussle. Anxiety as Tinubu Atiku Obi 8 p.m. resume battle at Supreme Court. Apex Court begins hearing today. We have confidence in Supreme Court. PDP Atiku will be engaging in another round of propaganda. Onanuga. Of course, that story is on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. High cost of borrowing. Federal government targets domestic market to fund 9.05 trillion naira budget deficit. That story is on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. We also see, still on the front page, 57.6 billion naira for 360 SUV. Syrup drags reps to court. That story is on page 10 of the Vanguard newspaper. We see Plateau appeal court sacks Senate minority leader Nwadwan. Page 34 has that story. And of course, killings, Benue CP bans protests, tightens security. That story is on page 34. And of course, we see Pandev, MBF, slam Gumi orders over campaign of calumny against Wike. That story is on page 13. Those are the major stories you'll find on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. And that takes us to our next paper this morning, talking about Daily Trust newspaper. The writer there says, or the kicker there says, domestic foreign airlines disagree on multiple designations. Our businesses at risk, indigenous carriers, go and build your capacity. Foreign airlines, what bilateral air service agreement says. That story is on page 4 of Daily Trust. Still on the front page of Daily Trust, you see Benenkwari villagers raise alarm over Ansuru militants' presence. That story is on page 3 of the Daily Trust. Still on the front page of Daily Trust, ordering contractors back to site without payment wrong. Harawa tells federal government. Story is on page 7. We see Pandora's box, evidence of how Bello Matawale blew billions in Cargo Airport, Zamfara government. That story is on page 22 and 23 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And those are the major stories you find on the front page of Daily Trust this morning. And next up is the front page of the Nation newspaper. And on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning, of course, you look at the kicker there on the front page of the Nation. The kicker there says, Edo, Tinubu's homegrown plan good to revive economy. There is no likelihood of Nigeria seeking international assistance on debt restructuring. That's according to Edo, and that story is on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Still on the front page of the Nation, we see fake Nadeko plots anti-Tinubu campaign. US APC raises alarm. That story is on page 124 of the Nation newspaper. Lagos halts illegal land reclamation in Ikoyi, Lekki. Page 123 has that story. Of course, why we can't return to sites by federal road contractors. Page 24. 5 die, many injured in Kwara petrol truck accident. That story is on page 123 as well. We see a picture of NDLEA parading some suspects there also. Supreme Court justices dropped to 10. Hearing of presidential poll verdict holds today. That story is on page 4. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning. That takes us to the front page of Daily Times, and Daily Times as kicker there, Atiku Obi, APM versus Tinubu at Supreme Court. Atiku Obi will not be declared president today. Lawyers tell Nigerians neither will Tinubu be sacked today. Supreme Court will first run normal processes, they say. Let verdict help not end democracy, Barrister Mogwa. Expectations high nationwide. Of course, we also see on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper, Wike react to Gumi. Others, only president determines relationship with countries. Page 66 has that story. Nigeria Custom repels attack on facility. Still on page 66. FBI files on Tinubu will cause Nigeria great embarrassment. That story is still on page 66. Point to your justice, information commissioners now if there is nothing to hide. NBA others tell Oborowori. That story is still on page 6. Of course, to wrap up the front page of the Daily Times this morning, we see Akpabio may be interim president. Eve. That story is on page 7 of the Daily Times newspaper. And those are the major stories you find on the front page of Daily Times. The last paper this morning is the front page of Punch. The kicker there says 3-year blueprint. Federal government plans 26 trillion naira borrowing, 29 trillion naira for debt servicing. That story is on page 2. Debt servicing to exceed capital budget spending by 7.69 trillion naira amid slow economy. High debt servicing costs creating potential fiscal risks, government laments. We also see, still on the front page of the Punch, 5 die, 15 injured in Lagos-Ibadan highway crash. Of course, we see Israel-Hamas, Biden Pope, protesters want ceasefire. That story is on page 42 of the Punch newspaper. And of course, before we wrap up, we see Naira slums for the exchanges 1,190 Naira per dollar. That story is on page 36. Fuel hits 685 Naira per litre in North. That story is on page 31. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of Punch newspaper this morning. And that takes us to the very end of our daily spotlight. Of course, a lot of stories that are making the rounds, and you can pick up for reading this morning just to get yourself acquainted with the latest happenings from across Nigeria and the world. Of course, this is where we take a pause and head out to the news brief desk where Mary Joseph is standing by to take us round. When we come back, Rise and Shine will continue. Stay with us.
Every day marks a day of significance.
That in view of the apology tendered by this former minister who had earlier been cleared by this August Assembly,
as we face critical issues, developments and events which shape our social and political landscape here in Nigeria and beyond. Political Spectrum is a program specially designed to help make sense of all the moving parts of developments and occurrences in our nation's polity and political economy.
There is nothing wrong with Nigeria, but there's everything wrong.
The educational history of public figures holds significance beyond mere biographical details.
From executive, legislative and judicial developments at national and subnational levels to international diplomacy and relations.
Join us for exclusive interviews with key political figures, expert opinions, analysts, thought-provoking conversations for and against, shedding light on the major issues that matter. We will always keep you updated on the most factual, smartest and unbiased reportage.
Stay tuned to Political Spectrum. Political Spectrum. All sides matter at the round table. Political Spectrum. Exclusive to Spectrum Television.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates. As of state and government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news briefing Spectrum live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with a report that the federal government late Sunday evening reopened the Third Mainland Bridge barely 24 hours after closure for palliative work. The Federal Controller of Works in Lagos, Olukorede Kesha had expressed satisfaction with repairs done on the Third Mainland Bridge, assuring motorists of a smooth ride till the commencement of comprehensive rehabilitation in January 2024. During the inspection, the controllers stopped on various portions between Iyana Oworo and Adeniji Adele, where remedial repairs had been done on a 9.7-kilometer stretch of Lagos Island inbound lane. Meanwhile, the federal government, through the Ministry of Defense, weekend began the enrollment of veterans, widows and orphans of fallen heroes into the national safety net for fuel subsidy palliatives. Flagging off the exercise at Aguyi Ronsi Conference Center, Umuahia, Abia State, Minister of Defense Mohammed Badaru Abubakar said that no veteran or family of foreign heroes would be left out in the ongoing distribution of palliatives following the removal of fuel subsidy. He said that the exercise, which commenced in Abia, would go around the 36 states and Abuja, assuring veterans and families of foreign heroes that government had their interests at heart. Away from that, a former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, retired, has called for adequate investment in the education sector in order to build a formidable society. Gowon stated this during a Thanksgiving service to mark the 20th anniversary of Africa International College and Africa Community School in Abuja on Sunday. Represented by his brother Dauda Gowon, he said issues in the education sector, such as out-of-school children, school safety and others were intractable, hence the need for involvement of all and sundry. We head straight now to the foreign scene, where scores of people rushed to Deir el-Balal Hospital to identify bodies on Sunday after Israel stepped up its airstrikes on Gaza, as the territory's Hamas rulers said 4,651 people have now been killed since the start of the war. Authorities says Deir el-Balal in central Gaza had suffered most from one of the most intense nights of shelling since Israel started its bombardment in response to Hamas cross-border attacks on October 7. More than 260 people died in 24 hours, according to the Health Ministry toll, which said 1,873 of those killed in the past fortnight were children. And in sport, Jose Mourinho was sent off as Roma earned a last gasp 1-0 victory over Monza to move up to 6th in Serie A. Stefan El Shelway scored a 90-minute winner at the Stadio Olimpico after Romelu Lukaku and Sadio Asmond both hit the post for the host. Monza were forced to play more than 50 minutes with 10 men after Danilo Ambrosio first half dismissal, while Mourinho was given then a red card deep into injury time after making crying gestures towards the opposition bench. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
Secretary General, Heads of State and Government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
Voting for SpectrumTv to improve for the lapses in County.
our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court, my lord.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Glad to welcome you back. Of course, Mary Joseph taking us around the latest development across. And of course, in case you just joined us, this is Rise and Shine Monday edition. Time for you to wake up and get started with the rest of the goals you have for the month of October. Of course, we'll always encourage you to join us on our social media platform, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. The phone lines are up for conversations for you to chip in your 2 cents about what is happening in Nigeria. But right about now, like we informed you earlier on, we will be taking a very first interview, and I have the special honor of welcoming on set the coordinator of Akwa Ibom State Retired Primary School teachers in the state. Of course, this has been a major conversation that have been going back and forth prior to the electioneering period, where we saw the different gubernatorial candidates, speaking on what they intend to do with the emolument or the debt that was owed to retired primary school teachers and their next of kin, especially within the immediate past administration that was led by Governor Udom Emmanuel. I have Comrade Benjamin Benson, who is the coordinator. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine.
Good morning, Mr. Francis. I'm so glad to be here again. It's my pleasure.
Good to have you. How's it been? I know that billions upon billions have been released for the fight that you have been, leading the front line. How does it feel to know that Governor Pastor Moino so far, within his few months in office, has been able to release over 4.something billion, I think 4.6 billion naira?
Yes, thank you so much once again. And I want to start by commending the media in Akwa Ibom State, especially SpectrumTv. We know what they face. As much as we struggle out there, they provided a platform for us to air our views over the unpaid backlog of entitlements of retired primary school teachers over the years. But coming back to how much has been released so far by this government, well, it is a very good thing to know that this governor is different from the last governor, talking about His Excellency ex-governor Udom Emmanuel. Now, for all that we agitated for over the years, I think Governor Moino has tried to make it very simple. What he has released so far, we cannot say it is so much, but as if you compare to what the last government left behind. But it is a step in the right direction. For now, I think he's doing something about it, and right on time too, because the last government waited after 6 to 7 years before they did anything about it. And what they did was like a drop of water in the ocean. But Pastor Moino, even though we also consider the number of months he has spent so far as the governor of the state, and the little he has done, it has brought succor to so many people, even though it is not enough, but at least somebody has shown capacity that in all that we agitated for, all that we cried for, all that we went to jail for, this particular problem was doable. Let me say so. It was doable.
All right. Now, let's look at the generality of the debt burden, because you just mentioned in your early speech that the last administration did little or nothing about retired primary school teachers. Of course, we are well aware of the information and the fights, the different protests that, you and your organization and others carried out. So at this material time that we are here talking to the world, how much, what is the total debt burden that the state government in Akwa Ibom State is owing retired primary school teachers and their next of kin?
For the retired primary school teachers, as at the time Governor Udom Emmanuel was leaving, the total debt burden was 38 billion. Now, don't forget, the government is also indebted to the civil servants, pensioners. They are also indebted to the local government pensioners. So the total debt burden is above 70 billion if we talk about gratuities and pension arrears. So that is how the burden is, the debt burden, as far as these gratuities is concerned. So I think it is not because the workforce was so much they couldn't handle. It was because that government was not ready to take the responsibility of paying this entitlement. So it is much. For me, it is much. So far, what they have released so far is not even up to a quarter of what is involved.
But we can say, just like you stated initially, that Governor Pastor Moane has shown commitment, because we recall in his campaign, when he met with your leadership during the campaigning period, he said he was going to commit to a monthly allocation to ensure that this issue is settled. So far, has he been consistent with that move?
Yes, I wouldn't say he has been consistent. He has made 3 releases. This is his 5th month. I don't want to, I think I'm correct. This should be his 5th month. He has made 3 releases. Well, again, it's not about how many times he's going to release. It's about how much he's going to release per time. For instance, the last release is 1.6 billion. 1.6 billion is not going to the retired primary school teachers and next of kin. It's going to the civil servants, pensioners, local government pensioners, and the retired primary school teachers, and the next of kin, of course. So it is much. If you look at it, the total sum of that, it is much. But when you spread it across, and what they do normally is that, I don't want to preempt, but what they normally do is that they will give a whole 1 billion to the civil servants and pensioners. So what is left is to be shared between the 600 million that is left is to be shared between the retired primary school teachers and next of kin and the local government pensioners. So it doesn't leave much it doesn't add up to so much at the end of it. It doesn't add up to so much.
Okay, now, so if you're saying what has been released doesn't add up to so much, what move have you made to let the government know that, okay, we appreciate what your administration is starting with so far, but we feel if you truly have a commitment to solve this is the way you should go? Has there been any move like that from your the leadership of the retired primary school teachers and the next of kin?
Yes, we've written to the governor. We've written to him. We sent the letter last week by courier, and we also deliver another letter by hand, so that it will, whatever happens, he will get one of those or both. We've told him that we need consistency in the releases, and it should be a bit higher. We understand that also that, just like I've said before, it's not quite long since he came into office. He had other areas to look into. But also, the government must be prudent in management of its finances, so that whatever money, I don't think they should have spare money to play with now. Because 2 weeks ago, or about last week, I heard they went for a retreat in Lagos. That should cost a whole lot of money. And the House of Assembly people went to Ghana for one other retreat or so. So these areas of spending money should be cut off, so that whatever remains, whether you like it or not, owing the pensioners in Akwa Ibom State over 70 billion, I think people should have financial responsibility. We must apply financial responsibility in this state to have so much to be able to pay off this backlog.
Okay.
So we've written to the government.
And then you said that was last week, so we need to give government a little more time to see what the response is going to be like. Yes. But let's come back to some of the issues you've raised this morning. You talk about pensioners. We know that one of the issues that was recently brought back to the front burner of conversation has been the contributory pension scheme, that Akwa Ibom is not part of it. I'd like to ask, how has the advocacy for that been in Akwa Ibom State? Is that something that is also within your purview?
Yes, it is. It is. Because what we are talking about, this one does not concern just the retirees or the pensioners. Even the people in service today, at one time or the other, they contributed money towards their pensions at the end of their service. But unfortunately, that scheme failed. The scheme failed. And if that happens, who should we hold responsible? It is the government. The government is responsible for the failure of that scheme, because whatever was contributed did not get back to these workers on their retirement. And so government, first of all, government has failed to refund the money. That is part of the issues we are facing today. Because if government had refunded those monies they collected through the contributory pension scheme, maybe it would have taken care of much of what the pensioners are facing today. So I think it is still within the purview of government to resolve these issues. We heard that as much as 5 billion or over that was contributed. Now the government had promised under the last administration that they are going to make refunds, but till today we are yet to see any action on that from the government. Nothing has been done.
Okay, that's serious conversation. But if nothing has been done so far by the government, I know that the last time you had a protest at the government house, there were different issues that rose from the fact that you were not having the backing of the NLC, for instance, the TUC, the NUT, and other trade organizations that would have further facilitated your move. So I'd like to ask, how has the collaboration been towards that regards? Do you have strong support from the relevant trade organizations to further advocate for the cases of the people you're fighting for?
Well, no collaboration at all from any of the unions. And for me, it is very, very disappointing, very shameful. And I think it is one of the points that has brought our morale so down. Honestly, I don't think we needed to do these protests or agitations. It would have been the job of the unions, the respective unions, because these pensioners, they belong to one union or the other. They contributed their monthly dues to these unions, be it NUP, NUT, NLC, and other unions. They received their monthly contributions. But on retirement, the whole of these unions turned their back against their members. And apart from that, apart from just turning their back, I don't think they have given any support. The NLC just came up at the point where these payments started. We only knew that NLC existed. This is the same NLC that something happens today. If something happens today in Abuja, they will go to Abuja. They will be threatening the federal government. But now come back to Akwa Ibom, say where they belong, where he belongs, where they is supposed to be union activism. You barely hear that NLC has given a threat letter or a press release backing the workers or the pensioners here. So I would say that we've not received any support whatsoever from the union. In fact, to say the truth, the unions are against our agitations. All the unions in our
How so? What would make you say that?
The NLC chairman, for instance, said it on air that I led a peaceful protest to government house, and the police harassed us with tear gas and we were beaten. For God's sake, if you are a union leader and you are afraid of tear gas, police, now you better go to your home. Each time I went out for those peaceful protests, I was prepared. I was morally prepared. I was psychologically prepared. Anything can happen. It can be anything, for God's sake. So if as I was every time I led people out for a peaceful protest, I knew the worst could happen. But I'm afraid of a union leader that is afraid of police tear gas. This is why we are here. For instance, in the last, in the last 10 years, no Akwa Ibom worker has earned anything extra apart from what is agreed or sometimes backlog. But if you go to Edo State, you hear that the governor has added something to their salaries. Some few other states have done that. But in Akwa Ibom, it's not possible. They are not just doing that to the pensioners. They are doing that also to their workers in Akwa Ibom. And of course, you know that on the 1st of May of this year, the workers gathered at Ibom Hall, and the leadership of the NLC was booed. So it is not a secret again. The workers are not happy over the union they are under. So I know that they have not done anything to help our agitation, but they have not also done anything to help even the workers that they are supposed to represent.
So what would you say is responsible for this lack of cooperation between your advocacy and the NLC and other union? Because I know, for instance, the retired primary school teachers you're talking about, that should fall under the purview of the Nigerian Union of Teachers. They should be able to back that agitation, but we're not seeing that. So what would you say is responsible for it? Is it like, I don't know, what would you say is responsible?
It's simple. All the unions have lost vision. They have no focus. They don't know what their call is. For instance, the NLC has a building. They are raising a building, a story building. Now, who is funding the building? I won't be wrong if I say it is the government that is funding it. So when you go to government...
you won't also be right unless you have valid proof to show that it's government that is funding.
Until the NLC proves otherwise. You understand? So if you go to government to receive more funding for that building, it means that you cannot also go to ask government to pay entitlements of pensioners or workers' dues or whatever is due to the workers, to your workforce that you represent. So there's complacency on the part of the unions. I have seen so much. Within this space of agitation, I have seen so much. I've gone with the NUP to hand over a 21-day ultimatum to the head of civil service so that he can send it to the governor. When we go to the chairman of the, head of civil service, the letter was with the chairman of the NUP, the secretary of the NUP, but he couldn't hand it over to... What happened? They depend on government to sponsor their seminars. So you cannot be complacent and be responsible at the same time.
But sponsoring of training, retraining of personnel within the employ of government is government responsibility. But so that should not make somebody to compromise.
Yes, that is you knowing it. As I've said, if there's focus, you know that it is for the government to sponsor, and so they are not doing you any extra. They are not helping you. You should have taken it as their responsibility, and so it doesn't stop you from asking them for the right of your members. So sometimes they have given up. They have given so much to the government, and they have taken nothing or so little for their members. Is complacency, lack of focus. So we are at this point because the unions have refused. They know, but they have refused. The same union that will run to Abuja to make all the demands comes back to Akwa Ibom State, and nothing is added to the workers or to the pensioners.
So how do we resolve these crises that we have? How do you propose we resolve this?
Well, I believe that the power resides with the people, the workers especially, in this case, the pensioners. You know, we started the agitation from where there was no hope. Nobody was coming out to make any promise. Even the promise that government made, they failed. All the promises failed. But we kept on, the agitation was on. And finally, the government caved in. So it is not just enough. First of all, the workers should know who they are electing as their leaders. That's number one. Very crucial. That's one. And also, after electing people to be your leaders, you must also demand accountability. You must also demand accountability from these leaders. You don't just elect people and go back home to rest or to sleep. Ask them, tell them this is what you want. Of all these negotiations that have been going on since the fuel subsidy removal, what is the interest of the workers from Akwa Ibom State? What is the interest of the pensioners from Akwa Ibom State? So you hear things in Abuja when it comes down to, okay, what is the interest of people in the private sector? Because the NLC is saying that they are, in fact, they are an umbrella body for all these groups that I've just mentioned, and even for the people in the SMEs and the rest. So we are not protected. These people are not protected down here. So we must demand accountability from those that are leading. We must also understand that these people is also very crucial. Their leadership is also very crucial. In those days, they determine the prices of things. As far as that, to determine the prices of that things that are not commodities in the market are not prices does not increase because there's a slight increment in the prices of petroleum products also. So they have so much influence on what happens to the generality of the people. So we must also know the people that we elect for offices like that.
All right, just before we let you go, Comrade, what would be your last comment to the retired primary school teachers, pensioners, towards sustaining this advocacy? Because I wouldn't want to call it a fight, or I'd call it advocacy for their rights to be made available by the government.
Well, for the first thing is because we also have we are also having issues on the payments. Just like I've said.
Okay, now let's talk about that briefly. I think that's giving me more. Now that you've mentioned it's come back, are there issues with the payment in order of preferences? Do we have some level of corrupt practices where government officials favor some people against people, or are they following through the list from the years past as it should be?
No, I'm sorry, I couldn't bring a list. I would have shown you a list now that. This payment was supposed to start from 1990 or 99, thereabouts. But if you go to look at the list of people paid so far, a lot of people have been omitted.
Why?
And you hear somebody...
What's the explanation?
You don't know. Because these people also attended the verification exercise with all their documents. So sometimes they said they needed to come back for updates. So they still come back again from Lagos, from Kano, from Akwa Ibom State, the rest of the cities, to do updates, and they are not paid. And somebody from a committee will come and tell you that we have paid up to 2010, for instance. But there are people in 2002, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, they have not paid. The person in this same committee is retired in 2015. He has been paid. The wife has been paid. The wife who retired in 2018 has been paid. But there are people in 2002, 2003, and the rest, they have not received their monies. So what? Just like I'm at a loss.
Okay, so that is definitely something that we need to follow. That's definitely that we need to follow.
The media is a partner as far as this agitation is concerned. So you can follow it up. We want equity. We want accountability. We want to see transparency. If you go to the AG's office, that's Accountant General's office, they put out the names of those that have been paid for any batch of payments. They bring out the names and paste them. But if you go to SUBEB, they started these payments in 2021. No lists have been pasted. So there has been some anxieties which has given room to what we should be afraid of: corruption, corrupting the system. Okay. So because of course, if you don't paste names, it doesn't give the process, and it means that the process is not open.
All right, thank you so much, Comrade Benjamin Benson, for coming out. Of course, we truly appreciate you taking out the time to speak with us, and we do hope that the government of Akwa Ibom State and those saddled with the responsibility of paying retired primary school teachers and their next of kin, of course, pensioners, do due diligence. But the issue you've raised about alleged corruption currently happening within the payment system will definitely be sorted out. But at this point, we'll have to thank you so much. Thank you for coming on Rise and Shine.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure, always my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Of course, we'll take a short pause, and when we come back, we'll be returning with our second guest. Stay with us.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Glad to welcome you back. Of course, my guest this morning is none other than the award-winning investigative journalist Ibanga Isine. Of course, we are talking in response to his letter on behalf of the Kwaibom people and indeed questioning the insecurity that has happened across Nigeria. Recall about 2 or 3 months back down the line, we had core members from a Kwaibom state who were traveling to Zamfara state abducted by gunmen, and since then we've heard little or nothing from the leadership of this country. We know that at the beginning we had the House of Rep promising to do everything humanly possible to ensure that these core members are rescued from the kidnappers' hands, but so far, according to the leadership of the NYSC, just one has been released, and allegedly talks are ongoing between the NLC, the NYSC rather, and the kidnappers. But of course we have Ibanga Isine. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine, sir.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm fine, but it could be better.
All right. Now, let's talk about insecurity. I know that the course of your work has taken you around the length and breadth of Nigeria, and you have been one of the strongest journalists, standing for and lending your voice to issues of great concern. Let's talk about your letter to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the leadership of NYSC, the armed forces, and other organizations and leaders that you copied towards the abducted core members from Akwa Ibom State. How has the response been? It's been about almost a month since you made that letter.
Yes, I got to really hear about it all. My first, because I'm not in the country anyway, so I got to know about the kidnap from a younger person who got into my messenger to ask me to speak about it, that whether I was aware of the kidnap of core members, and I said I heard something like that, but I thought they had been released. He said no, that they have not been released. So I made contact and I tried to get in touch with the parents. There was no, I don't think the parents are really willing to talk, and so I couldn't get them. So the only thing that I could do at the time was to write that open letter, because if I had written a normal letter and dispatched to them, nobody will know. They will not even, there will be no impact. So I mostly like to write open letters when it has to do with public concern, service concerns. And so I wrote that letter. After that letter was published by many media organizations across the country, the House of Representatives, in fact, the NYSC issued a statement for the first time saying that they were doing something to get those children rescued. And then the next Wednesday, it came out on this. The story came out on Sunday. On Wednesday, the House of Representatives invited the NYC Director General to talk about that. I think the Senate also said things, and that was just all. The NYC told the House of Representatives that they were working with religious leaders in Zamfara, religious and traditional rulers in Zamfara, to get those NYC prospective corps members released. And my take was, this is a security issue. This is a criminal case where people kidnapped young people who were deployed for national service for ransom, for money. And why would traditional rulers and religious leaders involved in negotiating the release? Is there something we are not aware or the country does not know? Why is our security apparatus or security system seems handicapped at handling issues of bandits, Boko Haram, and Fulani herdsmen when they would not do that if those situations were to happen in other parts of the country? Remember, a few weeks ago, soldiers were attacked in Imo State or somewhere. They burned down the entire community. They burned down everywhere in that neighborhood. And those places have ghost towns just because somebody got mad and killed a soldier or confronted soldiers. But here in the northern Nigeria, the bandits, because they would bring down a plane, a military platform. They would kill soldiers, senior officers, embed the Pioneer, training institute, the Nigerian Defense Academy, and kill a senior officer, and nothing will happen. So why do we have this double standard? Why is Nigerian government and the Nigerian security agencies allow bandits to run riots all over the country, killing people, kidnapping people? Is there something that they're not telling us? This issue of kidnapping of youth corps members and keeping them for over a month is something that should not be tolerated. And I think the parents are not really willing or ready to get their children back. Probably, perhaps they are gaining from it. Because if you hold
Sorry about that, some network interference not allowing us to hear a lot more from our guest this morning, but we'll try to reconnect with the call, and of course, once we're able to do that, we'll continue with this conversation. But of course, it raises a whole lot of question why the Nigerian armed forces will act differently in other parts of the country as opposed to what is being observed in the northern part. Good morning, welcome back, Mr. Ibarra.
Yes, thank you.
All right, go ahead with your thoughts.
Okay, so nobody should have his or her child held the way these children are being held, and they're keeping quiet. I don't know what they are doing at the background, but you do not keep quiet and appear as if nothing has happened. If we have an adage in our society, back at home, that that means literally that the witch or wizard do not attack or take the child of the mother who shouts the loudest, who makes the loudest noise. And so the parents and the siblings, their classmates, are just keeping quiet. In fact, I organized a Twitter space where I invited young people all over the country, and especially in the States, and the social media community in the States, to join us in demanding for the release of these children. I got in touch with the student union president of UNUU. Some of the students of UNUU are, former students of UNUU, who are going to graduate recently, in a few weeks or so, are involved. And the student union president of UNUU did not reply, did not even join. The NACIS has not issued a statement. If this were to be involved with a politician or somebody, I'm writing something against a politician, NACIS and all the youth organizations in the state will come out to condemn me and say things. Now that it is one of them, I'm not in their generation, it is one of them, or those who are in their own generation, those who are their members are involved. NACIS has not said a word, has not moved. The student union community in Akwa Ibom State, all the institutions where these students were from, are not making statements, are not saying things. In my time in the University of Uyo, this will not happen. We will march the government out, we will march on the street, we will go to NYC and occupy NYC and say, release, get our children, our colleagues released. That was the spirit. Now, I don't know what is motivating them. I don't know what is driving them. Unfortunately, this is allowed to happen. And people don't really realize what is happening to those young people in wherever they're being kept. Those guys are not human. For men, they are being sodomized. Let me put that for everybody to listen to. Men are being sodomized. Women are being raped almost on daily. It is unimaginable to allow your child to be in that position for this long. And so the parents may not really understand the wider implication and the long-term effect of what they are allowing to happen to their children. Because you won't hold my child and I won't shout. I will shout even if I don't have anything. I cannot fight you. I cannot do anything. I have a voice. And God gave us a voice to raise when we are helpless. And we call on God. We call on those who are making things uncomfortable for us, to let go of us, to take their legs off our necks. But these people are just simply complacent.
All right, let's quickly get your opinion, sir. The House of the Federal House, talking about the National Assembly, the reps has spoken. So far, we've not seen any action. I know that Martin Zessen had come back to Akwa Ibom State to say yes. The Speaker has given a marching order. We're going to make sure we rescue the abducted, corps members from Akwa Ibom. We also saw in the letter you copied the Senate. I'd like to know, has the rep made any comment or reached out to you to personally inform you of what the government is doing in this regard, or as the Senate or the Akwa Ibom State government?
They don't owe me any obligation to me. The obligation they owe us as Nigerians, as citizens, is that we elected them to represent us and to intervene when these kind of situations have happened. Talk is cheap. Action is just the in thing. They have not acted rightly. And if these children are still being held, it means they have done absolutely nothing. Let nobody come to tell us that, oh, they are doing this, they are doing that. You cannot be doing things and the situation is still the same. So they don't have any obligation. I don't even expect them to call me to tell me, oh, they are doing this or they're doing that. What they should do is to get these children out and nothing, no more, no less. We should not be playing hide and seek with the lives of Nigerians, with the lives of our children. These people are the future of this country, and we should do everything to protect and ensure that they do not get into harm's way. If they are not doing that, then the government has failed, and shame onto them.
All right. I know that our time is almost limited, but just before we go, how do you propose Nigerians, Akwa Ibomites particularly, engage government further to ensure speedy recovery of our children who are still in captivity?
Well, I decided to keep quiet because I was almost talking alone. And when you are talking alone, you're walking and talking like you are just talking to yourself, soliloquizing. It looks like you are mad. Nobody was talking. Nobody was really, a lot of people were not interested in talking about it. So I kept quiet. And if we really want these children to come out, then all of us should speak up. You can see when you are calling me about a month after I issued the letter. I sent that letter to your organization. You did not do anything about it at that time. So 1 month after, so that is a very long period. That shows a little level of complacency. Even though you've called me now and you are talking about it. It should be something that we should be talking about. Media organizations, not only in Akwa Ibom State, but all over the country, should be talking about the insecurity, about the fact that the government major responsibility, as provided in the schedule of the Constitution, is to preserve life and property. And if government has failed to do that, then government should look at itself again and do the needful.
All right, just before I let you go, I'd like to appreciate you for taking out the time to be here. But let me also clarify that Planet Radio, thanks you, 102.7 FM and Spectrum TV have been on the forefront of this long before we got your letter, and we are consistently talking about this on a daily basis. It just took a while for me to get your contact. I think the very first person I reached out to but couldn't send your contact to me was Mr. Nana after I reached out. But luckily, I was able to get it from the Chancellor of the COPA after your last appearance. That is how I was able to reach you. But we have been on the forefront of making sure we conscientize the Akwa Ibomites, and we continue to engage government to ensure the release of our brothers and sisters who are still in kidnappers' den. But thank you so much for making out the time to speak to us.
And thank you so much for also headlining this issue. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Of course, that's the size of our package this morning on Rise and Shine. Our heart continues to go out to our brothers and sisters who are in kidnappers' den. And we call on the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, all the representatives from Akwa Ibom State, and indeed all the federal lawmakers to look holistically to the issue of the kidnapped students from Akwa Ibom. We call on the leadership of NYSC. We call on President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. Of course, the Akwa Ibom State government, led by Governor Pastor Umoino, it's about time for us to move away from talking the talk to doing actions and ensuring the release of our brothers and sisters who have been kidnapped. No one can say how much suffering, how much torture, how much repeated rape abuses they have been subjected to on a daily basis. Let's do all we can to make sure these abducted corps members are returned in one piece to their families. My name is Francis Oyemaida, and this has been the size of a package on Rise and Shine on Spectrum TV. Wishing you a lovely week. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. God bless the Akwa Ibom State. And let our leaders rise up to the responsibility of providing true dividends of democracy to the people. Do have yourself a lovely week. From me to you is bye-bye.